You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right. So apologies first up. I haven't recorded in over a month. I could have some rust going into this because obviously the wife's been away looking after a mother who's in hospital and at the end of life, and I've been looking after the kids. So timing and family takes precedence over the podcast. I'm supposed to be at Sambar camp or snow camp this week. That didn't happen, obviously, to look after the kids. So the next best thing, I thought I'd get on Rob, who is known as the Obsessed Sambar Man, and we thought we'd get him on here. Mate, that's how you know I like you, if you come back a second time. So it's either a positive or a negative, I don't know. How are you?
No, I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me back on. It's always a great thing to do, so very much appreciated.
Well, mate, a lot's been happening with you, and I know I touched base with you a little while back just to check in on you because you had a bit of a mishap, which happens to the best of us. What happened, mate?
So basically we shot a nice stag and got him back and tried to butcher him up back at home, and just a simple thing that I'd done a million times before, but basically I like to remove the hock from any of the legs because of this. The hocks are always in wallows, covered in dirt and wee and things like that. So I don't like to have any contaminants near my meat. So the hock comes off almost immediately. So anyway, so I've got the old Barker wood saw, hand saw, and left hand's holding the front hock. And so I'm cutting away with the right hand, and she just bound up and then spring loaded up and then sprung free. And she's just ripped straight across me left hand index knuckle. And severed two tendons in that above the knuckle there, so an extension tendon, I think they call it. It was pretty horrific to look at first up, and straight away sort of knew that this is a hospital job. We're going to hospital here.
No good at all.
No. So it threw me off work for probably 4 weeks. I'm sort of back on light duties. I've done a little bit of work with Sambar, just doing some back legs just to try and keep the hand moving and trying to keep my mind in a healthy position. So, which has been good. But yeah, we're slowly getting there now. And for 5 weeks in, my hand's starting to look pretty good. So hopefully we make a full recovery there.
It's actually quite scary how just something so simple and innocent can just turn bad so quickly. I know I had one with the missus. She was just slicing bread. We make our own bread and sourdough, and she was trying to push some out of a meat slicer that we were using to chop up the sourdough, and her fingers went in and just did some decent damage. I think she got 5 stitches. Nothing like yours, but it's funny. I sometimes I was talking to a mate and saying I think I'm possibly wanting to, those sort of stainless steel mesh gloves. To wear them just as a preventative.
The chainmail gloves.
Yep. Yeah, just in case, because no one does it on purpose. That's why it's called an accident. Just that peace of mind, not relying on the glove, but just being, maybe a secondary bit of precautionary sort of equipment.
I've got, to be honest, I've got 2 of them sitting down in the shed from back when I used to work abattoirs back in the day. And you get a little bit sick of, every now and then you'll hit your knife with them. And when you're using sort of real good butcher knives, Victorinoxes and Dickinsons and things like that, you don't really want to be, sharpening them all the time. But when you hit that stainless with the edge of your knife, it can really take it off. So, they always get thrown over the back of the shoulder, and to go bugger it, I'll keep me knife nice and sharp. So this time I probably should have had it on, but it's just one of those things. It's like just chopping through a bone with a wood saw. He's like, nah, she won't be right. We won't need a glove for that. So, but anyway, would have saved me a fair bit of grief, I would imagine, if I did have it on.
Well, mate, I'm glad you're on the road to recovery, and hopefully it'll be back and you'll be 100% very soon. But, mate, you wanted to talk about a topic tonight, and I was keen as introduce it to the listeners.
So I've been shooting on a couple of properties now for 2 years, and it's a different side of where I was 2 years ago. So now I wanted to to talk to you about and other people about the adverse effects of trophy hunting on private holdings, and not to get too carried away with public land and all that sort of stuff. We want to try and concentrate on the private holdings and the private properties that people shoot on. And how I got here was that when farms sell, managers change over, and, when hunters are, they're loyal to one farm manager, but when that farm manager goes and you get a new farm manager on, and he's got his views and he brings on his hunters. So we've taken over some properties here, and the prior hunters to it have been really big on trophy hunting and just shooting stags. And it's left quite a sort of an I think it's not negative effect, but it's just increased and exploded the population of does and spikies and mongrel stags, and probably the non-desired animal that people really want. And, we go out through the night and we're seeing just ridiculous amounts of deer. And, it borders a highway, and you'd be driving to and from the properties, and there's like 5 or 6 Sambar just hit on the roads trying to get to the property. And it's like, whoa, where did this come from? And sort of how did it develop? And so my mind is always thinking, and I'm thinking, all the hunters that have sort of been on these properties have all gone on and just looking for stags and, what they want. And it's just allowed the population of deer just to explode. And now with the or the manager on this property that I shoot with, he's kill everything. I want everything dead. The numbers are just too crash. I fix the fence one night, it's broken the next night. And so we're starting to think about, the adverse effects of trophy hunting. And this is one effect now. There's just, the numbers are just exploded. So we're just culling huge amounts of deer to the point where you've got no choice but to dump them. Like, I can't keep up as a butcher or to feed, the sanctuary where I'm have. They're inundated in meat, and these guys are just still culling huge amounts of deer, and it just does not seem to make a difference in the numbers. They're just, every time we go out, massive numbers again. So it's a pretty cool subject to try and get people interested in and to talk about. So I thought maybe we could venture down this path and see where it leads.
Look, I am very interested in this subject. I have not experienced it because, a lack of private land to hunt on. Yeah. So from my perspective, a lot of this is probably more theoretical anyway. But it sort of makes sense to me that if people are going and they're only chasing stags, then the population of hinds that obviously breed, once a stag is dropped, taken, whatever, the hinds can still breed with the next in line, and they're still going to do that.
That's right.
What makes it sort of concerning a little bit for me is that I would imagine that the farmers would have some sort of conversation or some sort of an arrangement with the hunter that there is an amount of hinds to cull before you take a stag. That sounds like a good management practice to retain a certain amount on the landscape, because you're never going to get rid of all of them. I appreciate that the farm owner wants, or the farm manager wants to get rid of them, but the reality is that's never going to happen. You need to maintain the numbers though. And as you said, you knock a heap off in one night, the next night more come down, because obviously the feed is good and it's opened up that territory. How do you think it was a combination of a little bit of a miscommunication with the hunters previously and the farm manager owner at the time? Or do you think it's just that could have been in place and trophy hunters, I just want to target the big stags. If it's not a big stag, I'm just letting it be?
Yeah, I think, it could come down to a lot of miscommunication between landowner and the hunters and that. And basically, like, everyone wants the whole idea of going out hunting sambar is to be able to shoot a nice stag, and everyone is well within their rights to be able to shoot a nice stag or shoot a stag at some point. And good luck to them. I wish them all the best when they do go out. But at a certain point, you've got to start to think, if I don't start shooting the numbers that the landowner sort of wants me to shoot, am I going to be able to keep shooting on the property, or is he going to start getting another hunter on or another professional shooter on and take out the numbers? So, it's a bit of a tricky and dicey sort of subject, but I sort of just think that if we can sort of find a healthy median between hunters and landowners so that everyone sort of stays somewhat happy, the landowner's getting, good numbers dropped, and then the hunters have been able to shoot a stag if they see one or need one, but they're also, taking some good numbers of does with them. So, and spikies or mongrels and things like that. So the list of desirables.
Well, I completely agree. And I think it's that nice zone in the middle that you're taking out enough to please the owner or the manager, and that the population is going to be maintained. Look, it's a really tricky subject when you start to think about the conversation going between property manager and hunter. And it's something that I have zero knowledge in because I haven't got onto a property with a farmer and had those conversations about what he wants and what to do and try to find that nice medium. So I'm probably the wrong person to be giving advice on this. But for me, I sort of sit there and think that there has to, as you said, there has to be that happy medium that you want them to be happy with what you're doing, but also controlling the amount of deer. And then from a trophy hunting perspective, I've got a few mates that they talk about how they manage their properties, that they will remove a lot of the hinds, and then they'll also make sure they'll be looking for the cull heads and taking anything out of the genetic pool that they are not as desirable for them. And that then promotes that ability to go up. It's funny because what you're saying, sort of while you were talking about it, I was thinking there going, if you don't control the numbers and it's going to exacerbate a bad situation, then what are the alternatives? That more hunters get led onto the property, which then potentially they will take the trophy that you're trying to keep, grow, whatever, maintain.
Absolutely.
Or the next step is that the aerial culling comes in and the property owner says, light them up, let's get rid of them. Yeah. There's too many here. And then no hunter is winning there. Meat on the ground also promotes other feral pests to grow in numbers that can cause other issues too. Then again, if it continues the way it is, and this is one I always have probably not arguments, but heated conversation, is there are quite a few people that don't want deer culled, that they want to protect them. And, you see the fights about keeping them as a game animal because they're worried if they go to pests that they'll all get wiped out. I don't think that will ever happen. Look at the fires. The bushfires raged through Victoria and New South Wales in 2020, wiped out heaps. If ever there was a time that you would get on top of the numbers, that was it, because they'd been decimated. And look where we are 5 years later, and they are in much bigger proportion than and spread anywhere else. Yep. Now, my concern is if we're going to be those people, and I know plenty of them, that I don't want to see the deer culled. I don't want to see any other management strategies. Just leave it to hunters to access their quarry. That's where we get to the stage where the numbers get even bigger. We see more car accidents, as you said, 5 deer hit on the way to the property. That's a problem because that starts to make the news. Then I honestly feel that the big push from people like the Invasive Species Council about poisoning, it just gives that more weight behind it as the solution. And that's no good for anyone. I don't care if you're a meat hunter, trophy hunter, anyone. That's a big problem for all.
Yeah. And that's kind of got me a little bit worried too at the moment too, is because, if the hunters are only shooting one deer, that's great. They've been able to harvest nearly 100% of that meat. That's great. But, when one deer here, one deer there, it's not really solving, a problem in the management of numbers or the situation for the landowner and the managers and that. And so you've got to start to think, as a hunter, we need to push past one deer, taking one deer. We need to start taking 2 and 3 deer and trying to reduce that. And you take as much meat as you can and harvest as much meat as you can. But at some point, I think when people go on, they need to start taking more numbers, and you just one D is a tough night, but if you can push past shooting one deer, shoot two, and shoot three, then the landowners are going to be much more happier, and they're getting a bit more of a result. But it's sort of you've just got to try and work it out with the landowner what he wants, because every landowner is different, every manager is different, and I think we're past the point now of being able to maintain a number. I think we're borderline looking down the barrel if we don't do some serious change in our hunting, that the government or whoever will start to step in with alternative means of culling, and that's not what I want at all. So I think it's a pretty cool subject to see if we can start to encourage more hunters to go, right, oh, well, we've shot one, we know where that is, let's start pushing in for the second and the third deer, and really sort of having a more of an impact on it. So rather than just being happy with one deer for the night, or one deer for the hunting day.
It then brings me to a sort of a different perspective. So I want to touch on two things. Firstly, I put out a new video today on the Hunting Conservation Bill 2025. So if you haven't, jump over to YouTube and check out the video. The ISC, Invasive Species Council, they have thrown some stats out there that for every hunting license in Australia, only 0.7 feral animals are harvested by a hunter. I think that's very wrong, because I don't think the data is actually received properly, and there are mechanisms like Queensland has no public land hunting, so they only hunt private. Where do they put the data of what they're taking? New South Wales is only public land, and it's much harder to hunt public land than it is private. Those numbers are there. It's only half, and I don't even think it's half of the picture. I think it's probably more private land than public land hunters out there here in New South Wales. Victoria, obviously hog deer are tagged and recorded and things like that. But for the rest, it's a bit more open. You don't have to book. You can just go in there. So I do feel that their data is completely wrong. And that's not just talking about deer. That's talking about all the invasive species. So I think that's well and truly out. And then I talked about the Pig Doggers Association, Hunters Association up in Queensland, where they were, Australia's greatest pig hunt, I think it's called, and they've wiped out, something like 35,000 a week with all the hunters going around. So I sort of sit there and go, all right, I don't know where it sort of lies, because the data has so many holes in it. And then you can talk about hunters not wanting to put accurate data because they don't want to give away their spots or forests that hold deer and things like that too. I think that's doing us a disservice, because then they have the argument of saying hunters aren't effective, which I totally disagree with. As you were alluding to and talking about, hunters are harvesting the meat, which means that other feral pests are not consuming that and growing in numbers because there's more food on the ground. Look, it's such a convoluted and tricky subject to talk about. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because there's so many elements to chat about. And I think that's a really good thing to have those conversations. And then another side there is private land access, is how do you get it? There's always people talking, on Facebook, trying to get access everywhere and trying to arrange things, and props to them. If you find out, please let me know how you do it, because I'm still battling. Then you talk about that if people get that access, they want to hold on to it so tightly, and it's quite rare that other people are taking people on to assist in the harvesting and assist in the property owner. And I get that side of it too, because everyone's heard that you take someone out and they try and do the dirty on you and get access or go behind your back. And, there's a million people that have told me those stories. There's a few that have a lot of access. I've got a couple of mates, they have heaps of access. Then, and we've had the chat about it, going, how much is too much that you can't service? But, one of them in particular, he's got heaps, but he takes a lot of people with him. So props to him for that. Then I see others out there, and I see that all the time, is I know how much access they have, and they're continually trying to get more and more and more. And then that takes it away from other hunters getting that opportunity, which I dislike because I'm one of those people that doesn't have it. And, I sit there and say, if you have 40 properties and you're not taking anyone to it and helping out young hunters, what are you doing? You're not helping the hunting community. You're being greedy. You can't service them properly. For what? Is that an element of trophy hunting that is really poor because you're trying to keep that potential for those extra blocks and not allow anybody else on there? Whereas I don't know if meat hunters would have that same perception because they're just going for meat. It's fascinating. And please, I'm not putting anybody down. I don't care how you like to hunt. As long as it's legal and ethical, I don't give a damn. But it's interesting to see the dynamics or potential dynamics and viewing it from trying to be, I guess, as unbiased as I could be.
But yeah, I guess for me, landowners they have their rules and they want something shot, whether it's deer, kangaroos with permits, foxes and things like that. You've got to pretty much obey what they say and do what they want. So I pride myself on doing as much as I can for that farmer or that landowner. So if he says he wants certain animals shot, that's what we target. We don't worry about the deer. We don't worry about, kangaroos or whatever. If they want foxes done, you got to shoot foxes and you got to let deer walk past and do that. If they want the deer dead, you shoot deer. You don't shoot nothing else. You're targeting specific animals and pushing for the results. And that's been working really well. Land for me has generated almost by itself now. The last 500 acres I got was because of word of mouth. And then the landowner actually rang me and said, can you come and shoot on my property? And I said, we'll come out and have a look at it. And it's 90%, unfavorable sort of conditions and things like that. But we still went on. We took out a lot of animals that he wanted and he's happy with that. Now he's like, if you want to shoot the deer and get on with it and do that. So it's sort of, you've almost got to be ruthless at the start or, through the time you have that property. Because like I said before, land sells, managers leave and swap and change. And therefore you might only have a 2-year window on that private property. So if you're, doing everything you can for that land manager or the owner, then that's great. But it's all time limited. And, you've just got to make the most of what you've got when you've got it and make sure that the landowner values you as a hunter to have on his property. And when you've got that good relationship going, land sort of generates by itself because these small communities, all the landowners, they all know each other. They all talk to each other. They all meet at the cattle stud yards and they're all talking. And it doesn't take much for your name to get dropped. And if you've got a good reputation and you keep a good reputation, you will just start to get properties to the point where you, like you said, you just you can't deal with them all. You're just becoming greedy, I suppose, with, how to say it. So, but yeah, that's sort of how it's been working for me. And I think at the moment I've got a little bit more than I can handle. And I need to start sort of concentrating on certain areas. And especially now we're looking like Victoria's going to be going into a really bad sort of drought. Rains are down. Next summer is going to be brutal. We're going to have twice as much herbivores running around with half as much feed. And these farmers and the landowners are going to start really wanting pressure put on those animals to be controlled. And it's one aspect, to look down on and go, righto, I can do that. I'm right to do that. And so let's do it. As hard as it is, sometimes being wasteful is dead set against my morals. And when you have to leave a deer behind and you can't take anything off it, and the landowner says, no, leave it, just leave it, and move on for the next one, and sort of tears you up on the inside a little bit, but that's their rules, and you have to abide by their rules and get along with what they want. So But yeah, it's a good it's a good thing, I suppose, being trustworthy and respectful to the landowner.
Well, I think what you're saying does make sense. And as much as for some people it would hurt them not doing it, it's, I guess, the greater picture and the long-term result is looking after the farmer. So in turn, hopefully he looks after you, because I've heard plenty of those stories where someone had access and they just were not doing what the farmer or landowner, land manager wanted, and they just brought in new hunters. Makes sense. If you're not getting the job done, then someone else comes in to do the job. And I think it's sort of shocking for me a little bit at the moment, because I sort of sit here and go, deer have never been in such a big number. I would think there'd be so many more farmers out there wanting people to control the numbers. And personally, I haven't seen that. Again, I'm by no means, I'd actually tell people to do the complete opposite of trying to get access to what I do, because I'm that unsuccessful. To the point, I think we're going to do a podcast on some people that are actually good at getting access, because what I'm doing is definitely not working, and I'm betting there's a lot of people out there in the same position. And everyone tells me the same thing, is once you sort of get into a couple, that your name and whatnot will be passed in and more will come. So I'll take them at their word for that, like you just said as well. It's a fascinating topic, because I get confused as to why the numbers are growing so dramatically, and the government and others are not doing as much, or they're not letting hunters play an active role. So you guys just got promised another, I think it was something like 300,000 acres or 130,000 acres down there with the Snowy Alpine and the other national park. Great news. We're doing the opposite sort of up here, is that in New South Wales, that they're not even considering putting us in national parks. And that bill that I spoke about didn't even list national parks on it as an option on there. It seems crazy and costly, because that just means aerial colours coming in. And I'm not against aerial culling, and if people want to do it on their property, go for it. But I do sort of sit there and go, is it needed in national parks when there's zero access for the public? Why can't we do both? Why can't we have times where it's delayed, or no hunters in there because it's high community use? Like, they all make sense to me. And I think that everything has a value when we're talking about this management. Do you think, you probably know a bit better than me, trophy hunters are much more likely to not take hinds because they want to see more animals on the ground, because that gives more potential for trophies?
Yeah. I think you're right there. When people are so dedicated to being able to hunt a trophy animal and keep that trophy hunt animal, going for the next 3 to 5 years, so he becomes at the peak of his life, and then he can be shot at the right time. That's all good and well, and so that the mongrels will get culled out, and we maintain that good bloodline and genetics and that through it all. But for me personally, like, if you want stags, more stags, it's stags that attract stags. It's not the does that attract the stags. It's this territorial fighting and the territorial boundaries that's to me is what attracts the stags and maintains mature stags in an area. And so when you're culling out, all the small stags, you've got one mature animal now that he's not stuck to an area because he's trying to fight for that one area. He's now got a 14-kilometre stretch of land he's got to try and cover. And you might see him one day, might be 2 years before you see him the next time. So, it gets to the point where if you're trying to manage your numbers and maintain stags, then for me personally, I would be culling more does and more of the spikies and just trying to hold, bachelor mobs, because if you're after, the trophies, you want stags to attract stags. It's all about territorial fighting and territorial boundaries. And if you've got a patch of land that mature stag wants to keep, he will fight for it and he'll push everything else out and around. And that's sort of how I interpret it. I could be wrong, but for all the land that I've shot over my time and the amount of deer that we've shot and taken and harvested, this seems to be a pretty good, solid theory for everything that I've seen and done. And I'd put money on it that I'd be pretty right about that.
Do you think that also plays in someone's mind that if you're chasing a certain animal, that you are not wanting it to go anywhere? So if you're, as you just sort of said, if you don't want to see a stag there and then it disappears for 2 years, is that one thing that we're talking about here? Is that, do you think there's hunters that go, all right, he's there now, he's there regularly, I don't want to change anything of what's going on to give him time to develop and grow? And that comes to maybe not culling animals there because he doesn't want to disrupt the balance. Because as you just said, if you take out all the competition, his patch now becomes bigger. That could be a neighbouring property that you don't have access to.
Exactly right.
It's that real fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I especially with a lot of the hunters, you know, if they get not fearful, but certain level of fear gets into them, whereas if I don't shoot it, someone else will. It's only a matter of time before someone else comes on, or that deer stag goes across the fence and the neighbour shoots it. And you know, that neighbour, he might be really ruthless and he kills everything. He wants everything dead. And the other landowner says, no, you can just maintain your numbers and watch your stag and do that. And it gets to the point where that one time you didn't pull that trigger, you'll never see him again, and you'll probably kick yourself for the rest of your life. But that's hunting. It happens to the best of the guys up, especially up, you know, in the high country that are chasing monster heads, and you know they see it and they didn't get the shot that they desired. Next thing you know, they see it on Instagram by another hunter. So
yeah, it's I do see all sides of it, because depending on what you value and what you're doing, you know, there's people out there that chase, you know, one animal for years. And for me, you know, props to them, because that's such a big effort, and going after the one animal when anything could happen. As you said, it goes over next door and gets taken out. And I think that's why there was so much pushback, especially down there when thermals were sort of introduced.
yeah,
And we started to adapt, saying, you know, it's not that bad to use them. There was this real big divide in the hunting community that's cheating, as opposed to it's not hunting, it's just shooting and blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Look, I understand all that and all the different perspectives on that. But again, we go back to that. Is it that trophy hunting sort of mindset of protect the asset of deer at any costs? And who cares if the numbers explode? Who cares what happens in the future? Because I'm trying to look at my best interest right now.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I don't know the answer. I don't understand where people sit on it, because I get where the trophy hunters are coming from, and I'm not saying I completely disagree, because that's their thing. But then I also see the other side going, if the numbers explode, they could go in and just shoot everything, and then you've lost that ability too. Man, it's a complicated, complex
it is
issue.
I was just going to say, and I really feel for the hunters that don't live in the country areas, that have to travel so far away to be able to get an opportunity to shoot deer. And, you know, for myself, I live right here. I live in the, you know, amongst it all. I don't have to travel far for them. But for the guys that have to travel and only get out on the weekends, you know, they're happy to just to see a deer, let enough shoot one. And, you know, it's really sort of disheartening when a hunter goes into the bush, he takes his kids and, you know, he doesn't get one. And, you just go, well, okay, that's hunting. If you shot a deer every day, it'd be just shooting. So, you know, that's the fun of the hunt is, you know, being able to see one and not get a shot at it. And you ponder about it all next week, trying to work out how to get it. And, you know, you fingers crossed that every hunter goes away and gets one. And, again, sort of with the thermals, it's technology's developed. It's no different than fish finders in boats. That's probably a hot subject. Please don't negative comment me on that one. But it's a technology that's designed to use to give hunters an edge. And if hunters can adapt to that and use that, and that leads into more deer getting shot, more deer being harvested, then it's less likely that the government or whoever body agency goes, righto, we don't need to, do aerial culling. We don't need to do baits. We don't need to do other stuff. So we're trying to help hunters and give them this technology and say, well, here's all the technology. You've got nearly everything you need now to be able to successfully hunt and shoot a deer every time you go out. And I think for the guys that are negative on the thermals, I get it. Hunting deer is a pride thing. You can sit back and you can look at your stags and say, I shot that on my own, didn't need no technology about it, didn't do nothing. And I get it. That's great. I've been that person, and now I'm on the other side of the fence where my managers are saying, you have to kill everything. We want everything dead. And we just got massive numbers of deer to the point where I'm not even putting deer up on Instagram anymore because it's just too much. People just can't comprehend how many deer are being killed. And, you can only see one photo of a doe, and it's like you've seen 1,000 of them. And that's pretty much all we've been doing is just culling does and just awful heads, just mongrels, spikies, and just poor genetics. And, we've shot in 2 years, we've shot probably 150 to 160 deer. And I've only been able to, this year, I've only been able to pull 32 of them out and put them in the shed for the sanctuary. And, that's just, what do you say to those numbers? And like, that's not a BS number. We count everything on apps and phones to what we're taking and what we're shooting. And, the numbers are just crazy. So if people are not using that technology to benefit themselves, and I sort of feel that you're going to get left behind. If you are watching good deer, then people will come over the top of you and they'll shoot them anyway. And so your best interest is to, use the technology that's there and put it out and go home happy, go home with a big feed of venison and, shoot 2 or 3 for the weekend and have a good blast with your mates. And everyone gets a good feed. Everyone has good times, good laughter and that. And, they always say if you want to have more fun, shoot does. And I tell you what, it's right. You'll have more fun shooting does than, having a chance at shooting one stag for the year. So, there's so many angles, like you said, Matt, to come in at. And I hope that, to be able to see people on Instagram and with their families. And I love seeing kids. I love seeing kids with deer and having massive smiles on their face. It melts my heart. And, so yeah, that's for what I want. And I'd love to see more and more families and more people just shooting and harvesting meat and not worrying too much about the big trophies and the stags and that, and just go, righto, today's just going to be a family day out in the park and let's just have a shot at a deer and take home a deer.
All right. 2 things there is I see, playing devil's advocate, is that there are people there that have no interest in shooting the females because they want the trophy, because you made a comment there saying if you've seen one doe, you've seen 1,000 of them, like the photos are just, they're a doe. Like it's not that trophy. Yeah. It's not that bragging point. And I feel that this day and age with social media, that's what it's about. It's about getting the most clicks and the most likes and the most subscribers and all that.
Yeah.
And I sort of get that side of it, and that people want to see the stags. They don't want to see a hind taken. Some do, don't get me wrong. Well, there is. But I would say that I personally think that the number or the percentage difference would be most people want to see big stags. I reckon it would be 70-30, maybe higher.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did you switch that? Because you've come from that side of it to the point now that you're going the opposite and you're becoming vocal about it. Like, that's
Yeah.
a very interesting change, because
Yeah.
I haven't had too many people do that. Most people I know that are trophy hunters and in that space, they want to stay in that
Yeah.
space, and they just want more and bigger, and not going
Yeah.
the opposite way. It's quite a unique position.
My hunting life's been an absolute journey. It's had changes come into it, with the dingoes, changed my hunting. And now that I've got to work with certain landowners, it's changed my hunting. And, when I've been a trophy hunter. If you go into my shed, you'll know that I'm a trophy hunter. And, but I've been on both sides of the fence. And now that I'm working with a particular landowners, on certain areas, it's completely different. They want everything dead, because, and I don't really know the true reasons why the numbers have exploded. It's a theory that I thought about and I've gone, is it because so many trophy hunters have come on and just allowed the does to keep breeding? One deer turns into two turns into four, and etc. And by the 3 years in, you've got 30 odd deer on your property. So it's become a bit of a problem that I've seen, and I thought, this would be a pretty cool subject to bring it to light and to get people to talk about. And so we thought, well, let's have a crack at it, and hopefully, Matt, we can shed some light on what some of these answers might be.
Well, I think, I don't know if we're going to get some answers, but I think it's a great subject to talk about, because it is also a subject that the anti-hunters out there use against us, that they use trophy hunting as sort of the worst example of hunting, in the sense that it's only for the trophy. They don't care about the animal, which most of us would agree that's not the case at all. Like, most of the conversation we're having here is about wanting to see those animals flourish to become a bigger trophy. That's care, right? But then from a conservation side is where I sort of sit there and go, that gives them massive ammunition, where they're saying that hunters do let does, hinds, depending on the species, walk past them because they're not wanting that, because it's not the trophy.
Yeah.
We know that happens. Like, let's be completely honest and say that definitely does happen.
I've done it a million times myself, mate.
And this is the real tricky thing, because I understand why it's happening. If trophy hunting is your thing and that's what you want to focus on, I get that you might go out, whatever, you might go out every second night, you might go out once a year, it doesn't really matter, but you are going out with an objective to harvest that animal. If you shoot something else, you could spook that animal that you're trying to get, and that's what your heart desires. So I completely get it and understand. And as I said, I'm not condemning trophy hunting at all. Like, I understand why, and I appreciate that people do it, and I have no issue with people doing it. It's where we're at this time, and I think there has to be some merit to what you're saying in regards to hinds are the breeders, that if you're not taking them off the landscape, males really do nothing. You only need one male to populate a group of females. They all get pregnant, and they all have a second, and that population doubles. And, without culling or shooting or, predation, it's going to continue to grow. It's a really interesting topic. I've sort of suggested previously that, I know a lot of people won't like this one, but if you hunt on public or private, that there should be some sort of tag system, and you need to take 2-3 females before you take the male in that space. I think that would be a really decent solution. I know there'll be a lot of people out there going, I don't want to do that. And are they going to do that? Are they going to take that animal and then go for the girls? Okay, they might. But if we did it as an honesty system and said, people, hey, this keeps the numbers in check. The better food means better growth of antlers. The less amount of deer on the landscape is also going to contribute to that. These are all positives for that end trophy as well. It's so fascinating because the same was with thermal. I'm not opposed to technology. That is humans. We have to use everything in our power. Our power is our intellect and our ability to make things. We make better and better things. Okay,
That's right.
that is our genetic advancements, I guess, if you'd call them that. So whilst we haven't got the sight, the hearing, the smell, over, millions of years or whatever you want to say, however long deer have evolved for. Ours is our tech. Now, if you don't want to use that tech, don't. But I don't think we should be condemning people that do want to use that tech.
Exactly.
And for me, where do you stop that line? I've said it on here plenty of times. If that's the case, sell your guns, guys. Go back to a spear.
Yeah.
You can't, I personally don't feel you can sit here in one breath saying thermals are cheating, but hey, here's my, $10,000 scope that I can shoot something at 1,000 meters. Yeah. And I'm okay with that because I've justified it in my head that technology is acceptable and the thermal's not, or the night vision scope's not. Well, do you use a rangefinder? Well, that's unfair. Do you have a Kestrel? Well, don't check wind. Adjust for it yourself. Do you use iron sights? Like where do you go to say technology shouldn't be used? So I'm probably in the camp is that I think it's fair play. I don't see an issue with it being used because it's what we are as humans and it's our skill set and it's what gives us an advantage in the bush. That's not a bad thing in my opinion.
And I think with the technology, it just opens the window for a lot of other hunters who haven't been successful to be a bit more successful and give them an opportunity to be able to learn and go, shit, I didn't even know there was a deer there. Why was that deer even there? And then to create, the thinking process of why the deer are in this certain area and why they've come to that area and where they're going to. So you've got technology there to be able to help a lot of hunters who haven't been successful. And it's not really fair that they don't have the opportunity to be able to shoot a deer. I think there's enough deer out there for everyone to shoot 10 times over. I really get pissed off with people with jealousy in the deer hunting sort of, the time of it. But it's sort of why the jealousy comes into it, I have no idea. There's enough deer there for everyone. And if someone wants to use technology to be able to better themselves and help them be able to take home a feed of venison, then I'm all for it. Thumbs up for me. At the end of the day, it's all going to the same result, is to maintain the numbers of animals before they get put into a really bad pest program and we all miss out. And then that's where it's going to go.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest issue is there's so many variations of hunters out there. And I saw when the thermal thing got announced, all the guys that were mainly trophy hunters getting their back up against it and saying, no, this is unfair. It shouldn't happen because a new person who hasn't got the skills could shoot a good trophy. That's a bad thing. Look, from me, my personal perspective, I think anyone harvesting anything is a win, and it's much more likely to keep them in hunting, which much more likely to then mean that our numbers are strong and that the politicians listen to us more and that we do a better job of keeping numbers in check. I don't see the issues with that. I do understand where they're coming from because over the years that they had to plug away and learn and do the hard yards to get to where they got and that they feel it's cheating. I understand that. I get that. But the reality is that's with every sport. If you look at swimming and you go back to the Olympics when they brought out the swimsuits and that traps the oxygen and put people up higher in the water so they could swim faster. They broke all the records. I think 90% of the records were broken. That was on the back of technology when running. And to the point now they're banned again because there was that sort of unfair advantage. I get where they're coming from, and I can appreciate that for someone who's slogged it out their whole life and they may not have a good trophy, or that once in a lifetime trophy, someone's now shooting under thermal. I get why they're frustrated. I can see that side of it as I'm been in multiple sports, and I consider myself a very competitive person. I see that side of the competition. I don't sort of see it though, because I sort of think hunting is more about your personal bests and that you are improving upon yourself as opposed to somebody else, because it's not the same thing. Like you talk about 100-meter running race, everybody's running in the Olympics on the same track. Someone's not running on an indoor track with fans behind them. Someone's not running into a headwind in an open track. Whereas you could say that, hey, if you shoot on private compared to public, well, there are differences again. So is that trophy worth more than the other? I would never say that, because they're different circumstances and you should be comparing yourself to you. Now, I could get roasted on that opinion, because there's probably plenty of people out there that hunt trophies and are going, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, from that perspective. And hey, listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Again, that's cool. Yeah, it's a really tricky subject. I don't think we'll ever get a consensus of the hunting community on this. I think that's going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah, I think we just leave everyone to do what they want to do and how they want to do it without the backlash of having the pressures. I just think that if we can encourage more people to shoot more deer and push past the one deer that they've shot for the weekend and go into the second and the third, and just keep onto the numbers. You know, you might shoot a stag first up and you go, beautiful, all right, and that might happen 7 o'clock Saturday morning, first thing into your weekend. You go, right, well, now we'll spend the rest of the weekend and we'll start to take meat animals out, and we'll push for those does and things like that. So, you know, that's where sort of the subject I wanted to try and push forward into. And if the thermals allow people to be able to do that and harvest more deer and take more deer home to their families, then it's got to be a good thing. You know, why should anyone have to miss out? There is abundant of deer out there that have just been smashed on the roads and they're all gone to waste. Why couldn't someone have, you know, gone in and harvest that, and that could have fed a family for 6 to 8 months, if not more? So you go for a drive on my local roads here, there's nothing to say that there's 10 or 15 dead deer on the roads that are all being wasted. And, that all could have gone to people who don't have properties that shoot on, that could have had that permission to shoot on, harvested those animals, and probably taken a few more as well. And it would have been a lot better for the farmer, the landowners, a lot better for the person who hit the car, or hit the deer, sorry, not the car. And I think it has to go to the point where you need to start using technology to punch the numbers in. And I've been thinking about, I'd like to see an app, and an app on your phone that allows hunters to count numbers, not to have any GPS locations, not to have any spots or anything like that. It's a number where we as a collective can go, we can watch that number climb. You've got an app on your phone and you go, righto, there was 60 odd deer logged in this weekend that were shot. Doesn't have to say where they were or shot by however way. It's just an app that allows a collective number of deer harvested for the year. And might be a shit idea, I don't know, but it would be pretty cool to actually have hunters contributing and going to the government, hey, we shot over 150,000 deer for the year, and that's just from the hunters doing what they want to do, and they're counting the numbers. They're not scared to put that number in. And then, so we've got some sort of ammo to use in the future of being able to control these numbers and have the proof behind it, saying the hunters are doing a good job. We are pushing the numbers, and we are shooting the required quota, if there is or was a quota, that we would be able to reach. And, that'd be pretty cool. I'd love to see something like that.
Well, that's a great idea, and I've been working on something like that, and it's pretty much complete. So stay tuned. It should be out very, very soon, and hopefully it will be something that does what you just said and plenty more, and we get a bit of traction, because I completely agree. Being able to say hunters contributed this much is going to be a massive thing going forward in the future, and essentially that's what I'm trying to come up with to do. All right, mate. Well, I mean, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a pretty cool topic, mate. It's something I really wanted to bring to life, and I hope that there's people out there that do come in and comment and have some opinions and some ideas and better ways to be able to do stuff. And we try and be positive in everything we do. Try and be encouraging into everything we are, and try and get more hunters into being able to be the same as us. And I think that would be really, really good. And if we got anywhere near what we wanted, then it has to be a win. So, but I just think I'm going to say it one more time. Keep shooting does, keep shooting spikies. You'll have more fun. And it's something that's now my life has changed into. And it's pretty cool to be able to shoot, the quantities of deer and things like that. So my heart goes out to those who only get out once or twice a year. I wish I could take yous out there as well, but it's not going to happen. But anyway, just keep plugging away, people. Just keep shooting them and then that way we can keep all our bellies full.
All right, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.